This is a sermon I really didn't want to preach this morning. We're looking at the last few verses of Genesis chapter 19, verse 30. Very difficult passage. Very little commentary about this situation. Let me give you some background real quick. Because last week was Mother's Day, we talked about Hannah and Samuel. Now we're picking up chapter 19 again. Sodom and Gomorrah has been wiped out. Fire and brimstone fell from the sky. Probably the southern Jordan Valley still smoldering. Lot's wife had been encrusted or been turned into a pillar of salt because she couldn't leave her heart. She couldn't leave her heart was in Sodom, and she couldn't leave it. He has two daughters, and they run to the city of Zoar. And we find in Genesis 19, verse 30, that afterwards, that is, after everything is laying in ruins, I still in my mind envision the smell of sulfur in the air. I envision devastation and the devastating effects. It probably hasn't been able to even be viewed yet because of all that's going on. And in Zoar, Lot is afraid. It says Lot was afraid of the people of Zoar, so he left and he fled to the mountain, to the caves in the mountains. If you remember at the beginning of Genesis 19, where did the angels tell Lot to run to? To the caves in the mountains. He says, no, I want to go to the city over at Zoar. Look how small that village is. They permitted it. It's not what God wanted, but God permitted it. But shortly after everything had kind of been exploded, I don't know how you'd... It wasn't an explosion. It was just let's just face it. Let's just call it what it was. God won that day. It didn't take much. It was a cataclysmic event in that area. I picture Abraham standing on the mountain and looking down, shaking his head and wondering who could survive that. Lot's now afraid, and he takes his two daughters, and they run to the caves. Now, how long he lived there we don't know. But I want to pause there to tell you a story that has nothing to do with that. Okay? Nothing to do with that. I want to talk about this over here. Many years ago, and I was going to say a few years ago, it's many years now. You know, it's been many years. We took a group of teenagers to Point Loma, the Nazarene College there in Point Loma. And if you don't know where that's at, go over the bridge in San Diego, and you will find probably, if not, Santa Barbara's campus is pretty good, and Peppertine's campus is pretty good there on the coast of California. Down in the south of San Diego, Point Loma has got some pretty expensive property, and the baseball field lays out. It's a pitcher's dream because the wind is always blowing into the field and not out. And just a pretty campus. But one of the day trips was we took the kids to Mission Beach, and we told them, no fewer than 3 groups of 3 or more. I didn't want to see anybody leave without groups of 3 or more. And we put parameters in. Fortunately, we also had 2 sets of parents, plus Gina and I went, and so we had plenty of supervision, so we thought. A couple of girls who were very avid swimmers, and they were 16 and 17-year-old girls, and roughly, and they're swimming in the ocean. And there was a commotion. We didn't know what the commotion was all about. In fact, somebody had to come and tell us what was going on. But what was going on was the lifeguards noticed the development of a riptide starting to occur. And so they kind of got everybody out of the water, except these two girls. They were a little further out than everybody else. So they went out and got them because the girls didn't know they were being pulled out into the ocean. It was just developing. And I don't know how they do this. That's why they're lifeguards and I'm not. But they saw it developing. They blocked off a certain area of the beach and they got people out of the water. And then a couple of guys got on their surfboards. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen Baywatch, right? These guys on their surfboards and their red shorts. They go out there with their tan bodies and their muscular bodies, and they pull these two teenage girls onto their board and they take them back. Oh, the girls were thrilled. The girls were just thrilled to death. And the parents are standing there, and they realize it's their girls that are out there. And they couldn't figure out what was going on, so they got an explanation. A riptide was developing. And here's the thing. They were on the beach doing their thing. This was occurring, and the parents had no idea what was happening. They had no idea what was happening to those two girls because what had developed was a riptide that was pulling them away from safety out into the ocean. And fortunately, a couple of people, the people who were trained to know about those things, went out and got them, brought them back. Now, it's a great story for the girls, and trust me, the girls played up the story much bigger than it really was. But I want you to catch what I'm trying to say. We're all on the beach doing our thing. We were walking in the beach. They were out playing in the ocean, doing beach-like things. When this developed, and no one is even aware that their lives were in danger. They had no idea of the perils that was going on. And fortunately, before anything could happen, someone intervened. And that's where I want to start from in order for me to preach this message. We struggle with the riptide of depravity in our lives, in our world. And we don't notice the dangers that are around us. Dr. Carl Zimmerman, a Harvard sociologist, don't fact check me yet. You can fact check me, Cindy, you can fact check me in just a minute. With Mr. Google and AI, I can't hardly get away with anything. Dr. Carl Zimmerman was a Harvard sociologist who examined the rise and falls of empire through the centuries. And he paid close attention to the correlation between family life and national life. His book is entitled Family and the Civilization. And it concludes that the deterioration of civilizations follow a reasonably definable pattern, and that atomistic families dominate the social landscape in decaying cultures. When civilizations begin to unravel, they have several characteristics in common. Here's what they are. Number one, marriage lost its sacredness. Divorce became commonplace, and alternative forms of marriage were accepted. Feminist movements undermined complementary and cooperating roles as women lost their interest in mothering and instead started pursuing personal power. Parenting became increasingly difficult. Public disrespect for parents and authorities increased, and delinquencies and promiscuity became more commonplace. Adultery was celebrated, not punished. People who broke their marriage vows were admired. There was an increased tolerance for incestuous and homosexual sexual activity, with an increase in sex-related crimes. Zimmerman's conclusion seems to be so current that they're frightening if we think about it. He appeared to have observed the United States in the 21st century that we live in today when he was summarizing his facts. But here's the problem, and here's the catcher. He wrote this book, and it was published in 1947. 1947. Basically, left unchecked, evil within our humanity would cause us to self-destruct within one generation. Folks, this is why it's so important for the church. We need to be light and salt in the world. If you hear me say nothing more than that this morning, take that to heart. We are God flavors. We are God light in a world that's tasteless and dark. And it's our job to enhance the flavor of life. It's our job to bring light into the world. And so I want you, you get this vision of a riptide, right? They didn't know what was going on, but they were in danger. So I want us to look at the characteristics of defective reasoning, and then I want us to look at what we can do about it. Would that be all right? Okay. Characteristics of defective reasoning. There's some traits here. Here's the first trait. The absence of divine perspective. And you say, well, Pastor, we have not read anything from Genesis chapter 19, verse 30, and so on. Well, we're going to do that right now. We don't know how long Lot and his daughters were living in the caves. We don't have a clue. But I want you to imagine their world as they know it is gone. Fire and brimstone fell from heaven and wiped it out. The whole lush valley is no longer lush, and it still remains barren to this day. But there was at least enough time that passed that their daughters gave up the idea of marrying. Because look at verse 31 of Genesis 19. They're hiding in the cave, right? And one day the older daughter said to her sister, "There are no men left anywhere in this entire area. We can't get married like everyone else. And our father will soon be too old to have children." These women may have thought that the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and that valley may have affected every place else too. They may have thought perhaps, and this is not a rationalization, but they perhaps thought this was a cataclysmic event worldwide. I don't know. But I do know they have lost everything that they ever thought of. They doubted their chances of finding an eligible man. Why? Because look at what they're looking at. Regardless, though, their perspective has omitted one thing. They are not looking up, they're looking out. Folks, I'm telling you, when you stop looking up and you start looking out, it's horrifying. These girls had lost hope because they didn't have any clue to look up at God. There was an omission of the divine in their lives. Well, Lot was declared righteous. Doesn't mean he passed that on to his family. Their perspective omits any consideration of God. We see no thought given to prayer. We don't see them waiting on God. Remember Abram and Sarai? They didn't want to wait on God either. Look at the mess we're in now. It never occurred to them that God saved them, and therefore if God saved them, wouldn't He protect them and wouldn't He meet their needs? But when you're looking out at the devastation that's around you and you're not looking up, you lose sight of the divine. Instead of seeking God, they imagined how they were going to exist. How would the people of Sodom solve this problem? That's the only perspective they had. The girls grew up walking alongside the other people in their communities, trying to look like them, trying to talk like them, trying to act like them. What's interesting when we sometimes pick up our grandkids from school, All those kids are coming out looking alike. Now, yes, they have some uniforms on, but they have to have certain shoes, because that's one freedom. And I guess these Crocs are really in style now for some of this. And so everybody's wearing Crocs. And on top of that, they're putting little things on top of their little knickknacks. Have you seen that? Some of you have. And so they're coming out. They want to be like each other. They want to talk like each other. By the time the daughters were rescued from the cesspool that they were living in, they didn't even realize how bad it was. Their mind had already been contaminated. They lost the perspective of the divine. Here's the second trait. There's this distortion of moral discernment. What do you mean by that? A distortion of moral discernment. It's that old adage, okay? Well, I'll borrow the expression and insert the right thing, okay? You can take the girls out of Sodom, but it's hard to take Sodom out of the girls. Look at verse 31, the end of 31 and 32 here. There are no men left anywhere in the entire area, so we can't marry one. We can't get married like anyone else. Our father would be soon too old to even have children. So what's the solution? Look at their solution, verse 32. Come, let's get him drunk with wine, and then we'll have sex with him. And then we will have sex with him. That way we will preserve our family line through our father. Lot's older daughter suggests a solution that she thought was natural and reasonable. And we're going, how can that happen? Well, first of all, there's a lack of the divine, right? But also, there's a distortion of moral discernment, because they were imitating everybody around them. Who knows how many of their friends lived in incestuous homes when they were growing up? How often did they hear their peers talk about their sexual experiences, perhaps with other family members? How often did that happen? Well, it must happen enough to apparently make an impression on their behavior and thinking it was normal. What is normal today? Think about that. What are we being told is normal today? And we go, how could this possibly be? But think about it. What do we consider as normal today? Does it look like there's a cesspool that we're living in? Or worse yet, there's a riptide in this cesspool dragging us out. The younger daughter didn't even object. We see no hesitation. Both girls seem quite accepting about what they needed to do. Oh, and guess what? These girls were quite adept at getting what they wanted from a man. They got him drunk and they seduced him. They formulated and implemented a scheme as casually as you and I planning a trip out of town. Didn't give it a second thought. That leads to the third trait, because there's a breakdown in authority here. There's a breakdown in authority. In this case, there was a breakdown of parental authority. Neither girl saw herself crossing a monumentous boundary by sleeping with their father. They didn't see that. All they wanted is they wanted to become mothers. What's a mother need? All she needs is a man to impregnate her so they could have a child. And guess what? Lot was conveniently present. So why not? They clearly didn't see him as their father, as a man to be honored or respected. There was a breakdown of authority. He had not been the spiritual leader in his family. I'm guessing here, when they were growing up, well, think about this. As they was growing up, he was at the city gates. He was trying to be influential. He was looking for power for himself. And everything was about Lot. And guess what happened when the strangers came? What did he do with his daughters? Here, take my daughters instead. There's a breakdown here someplace. So in the mind of the daughters, nothing distinguished their father from any other man. And we go, oh, that sounds gross. But understand, there's a lack of a perspective of the divine, right? There's a distortion of moral discernment. And now there's a breakdown of authority. Do you see the pattern? Judging by the way his daughters moved him and manipulated him, he might as well have been a piece of furniture. Look at verse 33. So that night they got him drunk with wine. And the older daughter went in and had intercourse with her father, and he was unaware of her lying down or getting up. He was unaware. He was that drunk, which leads to the fourth trait, and that is a buildup of immoral sensitivity. Children who are exposed to immorality repeatedly over long periods of time begin to lose their sensitivity. They become emotionally hardened. They become spiritually detached. If their exposure starts early in their formation, they never develop a sense of conscience. Someone wrote, if somehow they, that is, children, gain a sense of who they are and develop a personal code of ethics, they still have no problem behaving immorally because that's all they've known. These girls barely hesitated to commit acts that would shock us. It tilts and distorts our moral compass. But observe how casually these two women are as they carry out their plans. Verse 34. The next morning the older daughter said to her younger sister, I had sex with our father last night. Let's get him drunk with wine again tonight, and you go in and you have sex with him. And that way we will preserve our family line through our father. Verse 35. So that night they got him drunk with wine again. And the younger daughter went in and had intercourse with him. And as before, he was unaware of her lying down and getting up. Back in Sodom, many would say Lot had it all. He had comfort, he had prosperity, he has wealth, he had power. He sat among some of the most prosperous, influential leaders of the community. He owned his own house within the city walls. He had managed to arrange marriages for his daughters and looked forward to having grandchildren. But the truth be told, his success was all superficial. There was no substance to it. And moreover, he gambled on Sodom, and guess what? He lost everything. You know, sometimes we hear in the news that someone's house has burned down. And they'll say in their interview, we didn't lose anything that can't be replaced. We all got out alive, and we have each other. But a lot of you couldn't even say that. He couldn't say that. He had lost his material goods. He had lost his family. It disintegrated. And everything he had spent his life acquiring quickly became nothing. A few weeks later, the physical signs were clear. Look at verses 36, 37, 38. As a result, both Lot's daughters became pregnant by their own father. When the older daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Moab. When he became the ancestors of the nation now known as the Moabites. When the younger daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Ben-Ammi. He became the ancestor of a nation now known as the Amorites. 9 months. Notice there's 9 months that separates verse 36 and verse 37. We neither hear nor or see anything about Lot after this. In fact, He's not even spoken of in the concluding chapters of chapter 19. There's no outrage, no confrontation, no sorrow. There doesn't appear to be any repentance or acknowledgement at all of what's gone on. The narrative just announces these births as if there's no difference to any other situation going on at the time. And even the naming of the boys show their brazen attitude. Lot's life would be irrelevant if it were not for Moab and Ben-Ami. They became the patriarchs of the Moabites and the Ammonites, and they were Israel's enemies all throughout the Old Testament. So what do we do about it? How do I protect myself? How do I protect my family? How do I protect those that I love and care for? How do I protect myself and family from this riptide? Because, folks, listen, there may be very few lifeguards on a beach. Sometimes I have gone out to the beach. We lived in Southern California. We'd go out to Capel Beach. And sometimes you wouldn't see, you look all up and down, there's no lifeguards out there. We went to Ventura Beach when we took some youth groups out there. There's no lifeguards out there. You never know when a riptide's going to occur. So first of all, how do I protect myself and my family? First, recognize that no one is immune from the danger. One of the scariest things we did with youth groups when we took them on trips is go someplace where it was not fenced and contained. And the beach was one of those things. Who knows? Some kid may get it in his head to jump in the ocean and swim to Hawaii. What do I tell his parents then? That was going through my head every time we go to the beach. I hated the beach when I did youth ministry. I hated the beach. Lot moved to Sodom, either oblivious to the dangers or thinking he could withstand the pressure. According to the Apostle Paul, he did manage to avoid committing the sins of Sodom, because in 2 Peter 2, verses 7 and 8, but God also rescued Lot out of Sodom because he was a righteous man who was sick of the shameful immorality of the wicked people around him. Yes, Lot was a righteous man who was tormented in his soul by the wickedness he saw and heard day after day. Amazingly, however, his daughter remained virgins in the city, which seemed uncommon in that day. Even so, the influence of his culture relentlessly dragged his family down and took them out into sea where they would drown. Eventually, the years of exposure to evil took a toll on everybody in this family. He lost everything. But folks, listen. We understand this. We need to recognize that no one is immune to the dangers. No one is immune from a riptide of depravity. You're not immune. I'm not immune. You say, well, I've gone to school. I've been educated. I too is a graduate of some college. I too have an advanced degree, but I don't know what I did with or how I'm doing with it. But nevertheless, we're all immune. How good do you think you are? How good do you think you need to be immune? Those girls who went out in the ocean, I have no doubt they were good swimmers. There's no doubt in the world that they're good swimmers, but they cannot swim against a riptide. The only thing you can do is to swim sideways and hope to get out from underneath it. And then when you do, you have to look at how far away from the shore you really are. Your family's not immune. The deadly downward drag of immorality can overcome any of us. But I think it would be important for you to say this. And you don't need to say this right now, but maybe we do. You need to repeat to yourself, I'm vulnerable. This could happen to me and my family. Say that with me. I'm vulnerable. Say that. I'm vulnerable. Now say it like you mean it. I'm vulnerable. This could happen to me and my family. Recognize that no one is immune. Pay attention to the subtle hints. Don't ignore something. Don't ignore the hints that something is wrong when you spend time with the families or friends. Pay attention. Sometimes you go out, right, and something just doesn't seem right. You know what I mean? This just doesn't seem right. And there are times where you just have to say, you know what? I think we need to leave. We need to go. One of the things was one of our mission trips. We took some good friends with us as sponsors or chaperones, and they're godly people. The couple, they really are. They truly were, and are. But we had a mix-up on one of our day outings, so we were trying to do something else. And they wanted to take like 8 or 10 of the older groups, and they wanted to go to Santa Monica Pier. Has anybody been to Santa Monica? Venice Beach? Is that something you want to take a 15-year-old girl down or a 15-year-old boy down to go see? It's not comfortable. I took a group of young adults. These are between the age of 18 and 22. We took them tubing down the Gila River. We came around the bend, and there are people jumping off the cliffs into the water, buck naked. Let's keep going, so they keep swimming. Let's keep on swimming, keep on swimming. What's Dory say? Keep on swimming, keep on swimming. Okay? Never took a high school group down the Gila River because of that. So you know when something's wrong. So choose your entertainment wisely. Keep an eye on what's entertaining your children. Get in the habit of asking yourself, will I be a better person because of this? Is this the kind of thing that will make me healthier? I like what Carl says. You know, is this healthy, or shouldn't I not do this? Are my children going to benefit from this? I really don't see the benefit of Bluey, but I'm so sick and tired of Bluey. But boy, those parents play with those kids all the time. I don't know what they do for a living, but they play with those kids all the time. Parents playing with the kids. Is that a radical idea or what? Avoid people who make light of sacred things. We'll be teased for our faith. Oh, do you read the Bible? Do you really pray? Do you need those crutches? You know, it's time for you to take your kids away from that. Yes, I need that crutch. Yes, I need God in my life. Yes, I can't do this on my own. Number 3, declare and model your standard repeatedly. Lot never did this. He had no standard. He may have avoided the involvement of a sinful lifestyle, but he thoughtlessly planted his family right in the middle of it. I've been watching these car chases on TV. I've got them streaming these car chases. You know what I've discovered? Some of them last like an hour. And I keep saying, why am I watching this? I keep watching. You know what? They all end the same way. The guy gets caught, and he goes to jail. Don't you think somewhere along the line we'd get smart? You get lit up because the cop's behind you, you must have done something wrong, you pull over. You pay your ticket. But if you take off, you're going to spend it in jail. You create 3 or 4 or 5 separate felony charges. And you're going to spend 6-7 years in jail. And I'm thinking, we're seeing this, and they stream this online. Didn't you think they would learn? Oh, wait a minute, we're human beings. Declare what your standard is and then start living it out. Charles Swindoll writes about imitating one family he knew that had a list of virtues actually posted in the kitchen on their refrigerator. They would read them regularly. They'd work on them as a family. They'd recite them. The children were encouraged to memorize them. They would talk about these virtues at the dinner table and discuss them and how to put them into practice each and every day. Do you think those children is getting a solid foundation for their lives? Say yes. And you say, well, this seems pretty extreme. How can that? But consider how often and how long children are exposed to immoral influences each and every day. Just go to school, go to a public school, and you'll see. Because they love and admire our examples, we carry an extreme or immense weight with us. Gina sometimes even walks out of the room when I'm watching something on television. But here comes the kids. Here comes Bluey. I got to watch Bluey like the umpteenth time. They must have like 30,000 episodes. Discuss your values, model your values, encourage your children. And 4, guard against passivity. This is a killer, folks. You know what? That's okay, I'm just going to turn the TV off. But then they watch what you're doing. We are passive. They think they're going to learn this by osmosis. We live in a filthy culture, and it's easy to look past it. We look at the pretty ocean, the sandy beach. By the way, the Pacific Ocean in Southern California and Northern California, it's cold. I don't know how people stand just be in the water that long, but you go to San Diego's a little warmer than up the coast, but it's just cold. But they're in it, and they're swimming, and they're playing their beach balls. They're swimming. They're doing can't touch the bottom. They go down. They get on their boogie boards or whatever, and they're unaware of the danger that lies just below the surface. Did you know most shark attacks happen within 20 feet of the shore? Not to scare you or anything. Anyway. You might think it's not a big deal. Being a kid yourself, you were exposed to immorality. And you go, I turned out okay, so they'll turn out okay, right? But we got to stop and think. Was our generation anywhere near what it's like today? Listen to what your kids bring home. And you say, I don't have any kids. This is not a message for me. Folks, listen. Sometimes it takes 2 parents to make a living and to raise. They need grandparents around. And if they don't have grandparents, they need to find supplements for their grandparents. They need to find surrogates for their grandparents. I was noticing yesterday. I did a graveside service for a family friend's father. We grew up. It was our family, his family, and I knew them better than I know my own cousins. In fact, I don't know my cousins. I have a bunch of cousins. They all live in the upper Midwest. It's too cold for me in the upper Midwest, so I don't go to the upper Midwest. It's too hot for them to come down. I don't know who they are. But I have surrogates. I have cousins that are not my cousins, but I've lived with, and we grew up and we played. We need each other. Liz and Scott and Zach and Fiona, those kids need grandparents around them. They probably have grandparents around them. And we're not here to take their place. But even our kids have Dave and Margie. And you say, who are Dave and Margie? They're a couple who's adopted our kids and our grandkids. And because we can't be around them very much. And they're not around them but together we're around them a whole lot. You say, so I want you to understand this is not just about your own personal life in the sense of, maybe your kids are grown, they're away from you. Find some young couple to mentor them. Hold them accountable to standards and a biblical lifestyle. Take an interest in the movies they are watching, the games they are playing, and the video games. Maybe find a game you can participate with them in. Don't expect the church or your Christian school to do your parenting. It has been said that the church cannot resurrect what the home puts to death. Billy Graham, in his book, World Aflame, I have that book. It's nice. It's a good book. He wrote on this subject. He says, quote, in a declining culture, one of its characteristics is that the ordinary people are unaware of what is happening. Only those who know and can read the signs of decadence are posing questions that as of yet has no answer. Mr. Average Man is comfortable in his complacency and as unconcerned as a silverfish making his home in a carton of discarded magazines on world affairs. He is not asking any questions because his social benefits from the government give him a false security. This is his trouble, and this is also his tragedy. Modern man has become a spectator of world events, observing on his television screen without becoming involved. He watches the ominous events of our time pass before his eyes while he sips on his beer in a comfortable chair. He does not seem to realize what's happening to him. He does not understand that his world is on fire and that he is about to be burned with it. Billy Graham, 30 years ago, wrote this. Always remember, passivity is your enemy. I've never known a time when passivity was healthy in any way, or how it led to good results. We need to be alert. We need to pay attention. We need to step up. We need to parent up. I don't have any kids. We'll find some kids to parent up with. Because the next generation needs you. You have been equipped and placed by God in a place where you must be proactive. And if you're living in Tucson, folks, you have to be proactive. It's a depraved culture. And some will still get caught in its undertow. Just like those girls, they've been taught well how to swim. They were taught not to go out by themselves. They were taught not to go in the water by themselves. They were taught don't eat and then go out because you get cramps. They were taught well. And yet what happened? They were still caught in the Riptide. It's a depraved culture. And some will get caught in its undertow. I just ask, don't be swept away because you ignored the danger. Or perhaps you failed to give your very best. Father, we are grateful that your word did not omit this act of depravity on these girls. It's a lesson that we should take to heart, that it could occur to any one of us. We could be caught up in the things of this world. And yet, right now, you're waiting to rain down fire and brimstone because your judgment is just a breath away. But how, Father, do we learn your ways? I ask you help us do that. I ask that you'll open the hearts of people here. If they do not know you, they will take a first step towards you. Because that's what it takes, is that first step to change their lives. And some of us have taken that first step. And we've been in church for, who knows, Father, so many years. And we're good swimmers here at church. But then we have to go out into the ocean. We've got to interact in the marketplace of ideas. And it's so easy for a riptide to pull us out. That's why we need other believers around us. That's why we need to be solid in your word. It's why we need to have an open communication with you about all the things in our lives. Father, that's why we need to be a part of a church home, a church family, to support us, to encourage us, to hold us accountable. And we too need to hold the people in our family accountable as well. When somebody falls, we shouldn't ignore them. We ought to help them get back on their feet. So Father, make us realize that any one of us could trip and fall. May there be people around us who will take compassion and mercy on us like you have with us. Get us back on our feet and head in the right direction. Father, I pray for the young couples that are here trying to raise a family in this cesspool of Tucson. And yet, we are a city of light that can shine in this darkness. I pray for the older members, myself included, that we will be surrogates if we're for those that need us. Let us set an example for others. Let us be aware of the dangers. Let us be aware that we're vulnerable. And let us find comfort and safety in your hands. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. The song that we're about to sing is called "The Savior is Waiting to Enter Your Life." I'm going to ask you to stand if you didn't mind. And if you can, I'm going to ask Jim, I can't get down these stairs. I'm going to ask you to just receive people as they come. Jim is a deacon in our church. He can keep a confidence like nobody else. And if you just need him to pray with you, he will. If you're looking for a church home, tell him about it. He'll set you down and give you some paperwork or whatever we got to do, or I'll come down later and talk to you. But don't wait. If you have a decision to make it this morning as we sing right now.